This is the first talk of a number of talks over the retreat, and I'm going to introduce the theme. We're going to introduce a particular theme, which all the other leaders on these evenings are going to talk about. So it's based on a text called the White Lotus Sutra. So White Lotus Sutra, it's a 2,000-year-old Buddhist text. And it comes in from a sort of second wave of Buddhist literature. So there was the time of the Buddha, about 2,500 years ago in India, and he taught and his teachings were remembered. And then a period of time later on, people started writing down the teachings because they transferred them by speaking and telling each other them. And there was this second wave of Buddhist teaching, which kind of extended from perhaps something that was quite homely, with the Buddha saying, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to look after this person, using kind of homely similes, such as a cartwheel being pulled by an ox, or a shadow that's sort of shone from the sun and how it never departs from you, like the kind of happiness that he says an enlightened being feels. In the White Lotus Sutra, we go way off the scale in terms of imagery and in terms of myth and in terms of non-conceptual communication of higher states of consciousness. So I'm going to introduce this sutra, and I'm going to, I'm just going to describe some of the things that happen, and also how we can actually engage with this and why it's relevant to us to have such a text. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. I want to start just going back to, a little bit back to yesterday evening when we spoke about, yesterday evening we spoke about in groups. It feels like a long time ago. We spoke about our hopes and our fears. And we spoke about why, in a way, we've probably been thinking about and talking about why did I come on retreat? And, I think it's fair to say, and especially if you're in this room at the moment or you're watching this talk, we have a lot of very positive things that have called us towards doing this. That's very obvious to me. So we might want a good place to be, especially at this time of year at Christmas. We might just want a good place to be, and we've seen a glimmering of something in coming on this Buddhist retreat. There's something that we expect is going to be a good place to be in some way. Good company, we're looking after ourselves, etc., etc. We might also, I think again, along the same lines, we probably just want the best for ourselves, and we're looking for that and trying to find out how can we do that. And we also probably have some sense that there's a possibility that on this retreat we might be able to grow. There's something in all the things that we can offer, and something in what Buddhism offers. We think maybe that's worth trying. Maybe that's worth having a shot and seeing if we can grow towards something more positive in our own lives. So I would guess that if you're sat here, something of that is true. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Okay, and then I want to talk a bit about also expectations that we might have about Buddhism, because probably a lot of us are also quite new. Some of us might be here, it might be literally the first time we've had any real contact with Buddhists or doing Buddhist activities or listening to Buddhism. So we might not know really anything coming into this, as well as we might have some ideas from popular culture. We might also know from having been involved a bit. So one thing that was really obvious yesterday was that a lot of people have an image of Buddhism as somewhere where we can get peace. We have the image of the Buddha, and the Buddha looks very peaceful. So that's one way in which we might associate with Buddhism. I think that's one of the key ones, especially in the Western world, where we have very unpeaceful lives, really. Buddhism represents perhaps peace. It might also be that we think, Buddhism is something that is a set of ideas. It's a set of ideas that we can engage with, learn like a university degree. And if we get the ideas all in line, then we can I don't know, live our lives better and be able to guide other people and whatever it is. So it might be a set of ideas. It might be quite a rational kind of thing to understand. We might see it as a lifestyle. So we might think, oh, well, I mean, personally, my way into Buddhism, I came to the London Buddhist Centre and I lived in London at the time, and that was just the most available place for me to practice Buddhism and to get and to explore it. But my idea of Buddhism was, yeah, the real thing is wearing robes, shaving my head, walking around, not having a job, great. Begging for food, all right, I'm up for it. So it might be a kind of lifestyle. It might also be something like a part of us that we can add on. So we might have our lives that we're very happy with, but we think, I can get something from Buddhism and bring that in with my life. So all of these things we can actually do. So far, I would say all of those things we can actually do and can benefit from practicing Buddhism. There's a few others that I just want to name, particularly from my own experience. I was also really interested, is there some kind of mystical thing? Can I have some kind of fantastic experience somewhere? Maybe some of you resonate with that. Is there a thread where by practicing Buddhism, I can learn to be a good force in the world? Can I do things? Can I be active? Can I be an activist? Can I use Buddhist values and make the world right, set the world right in some way? Can I be a hero in that kind of way? We might also be really drawn to the community of Buddhism. We might just see, here's a group of people, like I want to be on retreat at Christmas with a community of people who want to do the same thing as me, and I just want to connect with other people. I want friends. Again, it's something that we can do in Buddhist practice. So, Buddhism offers a lot of different things. It offers, and we might have maybe one or two or three of these things, particularly in the forefront of our mind. And those are good reasons to come on a Buddhist retreat. And those are good reasons to keep exploring Buddhism, because there's a lot of potential there in all of those. And so what I want to say about this in relation to the White Lotus Sutra is that there's a key message in the White Lotus Sutra. And that key message is, whatever it is, and whoever we are, and no matter where we are, where we're starting from, there's more. So whatever it is that we think, that's what I want to get from Buddhism, or that's why I was called to a retreat, the message of the White Lotus Sutra is that there's more than that. There's more than you can imagine. On the grandest scale, it's just completely unimaginable what the Buddhist path really leads to, and that's what this sutra will be in some way communicating to us, and I'll explore more how that happens. It's also the case, so the other key point of the White Lotus Sutra, so there's more, that's one. The other point is that it's true for every single person, and actually it's true for every single human being or sentient being of any kind, so any being, there's more. So it might be that you think, well, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses, I want to try Buddhism, but I don't feel like I can be a Buddhist, or I don't feel like I can grow spiritually in some way. I'm sure not many, I don't know how many people here think of themselves as a Buddhist, but I'm sure there are plenty of us who don't think that yet. We're just trying it. But it's true for every single person, and this is what the White Lotus Sutra says, it's true for every single person to be able to grow and develop beyond that imaginable possibility. The highest possibility for us is higher than we can imagine at the moment. So, to just illustrate that a bit, I'm afraid I can't offer an anecdote from the highest possibilities being reached in my own life, but I can offer an example that illustrates from a very normal day-to-day experience, and it was on this retreat actually. So before this retreat, before I came here, I was working, and I'd worked over the weekend, so I'd worked a 5-day week. I'd worked over the weekend because I had 2 jobs that I kind of wanted to do, and I took them up. And I planned that 2 days before I came on the retreat, I would take those 2 days off and go and visit some people who mean a lot to me, and catch up with them and just have their bit of rest and a bit of calming down before I came. Unfortunately, it got to my last 2 days of working, and you can guess what happens. I've still got work to do, and I've still got things that I don't feel I can leave the office and go. I don't feel I can leave the office without finishing these things. So I end up working my extra 2 days, which makes me very unhappy. It makes me quite sad that I haven't got this rest time and haven't spent time with people that I care about. And I actually did have a moment where I walked away from work that week, and I started questioning, can I really do this? Can I really do this job? I'm not naturally an admin person, I don't think. I've never thought I am, but I've given it a good go because I care about the job. I care about the cause that it's for. I actually work at the London Buddhist Centre. That's my sort of that's my day-to-day work. So I work there, and I just started to question, can I actually do this? Because for the last couple of months, I've been really trying to improve my productivity. I've been trying to make sure that I can finish on time, etc. Anyway, I just came on this retreat thinking maybe I need to change something here, and there was a bit of an unknown there, and I just didn't know. I thought, maybe I have had enough. Maybe I've hit my limit because I've tried, and again I find myself, in a bit of a bad state around managing my workload. So it's very normal. Maybe some people are familiar with this kind of thing. And when I was on the retreat, I was talking to Maitreya Bandhu, and we were talking about the shrines actually, because I'm on the shrine team, and he said to me, "You've got to be careful, Amalavira, that you're not fiddling with the shrines all day up to the point that we're actually starting the evening." In other words, he's saying, what I always do is I always push things back, and I always keep fiddling, and I can't stop doing work, basically. And he said, you just don't know how to say that's enough. And I thought, oh, you're right. You're totally right. I don't know how to say that's enough. I don't know how to stop I don't know how to stop when enough is enough, and just give myself that space. So in this conversation, it sort of rung true for me, and I suddenly realised, actually, you know what? I'm not done. I just need to look at that a bit more. I didn't see it before. Maitreya Bandhu shone a light on it, and I didn't see it. But now I see it. There's something that I do, and I need to just go home. I'm actually feeling now positive. I can go back home, go have another crack, go have another go, see if I can say that's enough sometimes, and cut corners. So this is a personal example. I mean, it's very small, very mundane, perhaps not even that interesting, but it's an example of where I think I have a limit, and then someone shows me that there is more that I couldn't imagine before that. So this is what the White Lotus Sutra is saying on the grandest scale about us. Whatever we think about our spiritual life, even with all the good things that we are aspiring towards, there's more than that, and it's beyond what we can imagine. And not only that, if we engage, it can happen at very unexpected times, and it always comes in sideways. It always comes in the way that we don't expect it. So I don't know if you've had that kind of experience before, but you think and then something comes in at the side, not from where you're looking. So that is, in a way, that could be a metaphor to hold on. Well, I don't know if it's a metaphor. That could be an image to hold on to, whatever you want to call it, for the whole retreat. For this whole retreat, hold on to the idea that whatever it is, wherever you think it's going, more is possible. There's more. Okay. So now I'm going to start talking a bit about the sutra itself, because I'm going to start setting the stage of the White Lotus Sutra, so that throughout the next week we start to hear the really sort of potent images that it offers. So this sutra, and a sutra is a text that reveals something, a text that comes from an enlightened being and teaches a spiritual meaning. So this particular one communicates in one of two very important ways of communication, two very important languages that you will find done, I think, very well in Buddhism and done to a very full degree in Buddhism. So we have firstly the language of concepts, the language of ideas, of reason, the language of rationality. So those might be practical things. We can imagine, and actually the language of facts, in a way, it's sort of getting very clear. So we can state things in a very logical way. Here's how this equals that. When this happens, that happens, etc. It's a very sort of conceptual way of engaging, and we can do that very well. It's very helpful for us to be able to do that, to get clear. The second kind of language, so we've got the language of concepts here, and the second kind of language is the language of images. The language of images, the language of myth, symbol, parable, story. It's a language which is completely non-rational. It's a language that we can't work out by applying and scrutinizing in a kind of intellectual way. It's a language that speaks to deeper parts of ourselves, unconscious parts of ourselves. And so if we imagine stories versus or facts versus stories, in the White Lotus Sutra, we're almost 100% in the language of stories. We're 100% in this world of stories, myths, parables. And so one thing to know when coming into the White Lotus Sutra is that we can't think our way through it. We have to let it affect us and see just what happens, see what comes in sideways, see what emerges unexpectedly. So stories do touch deeper parts of us. And I think there's something to be said for facts being, in a way, on their own, not very significant. A fact on its own is just a fact. It's rather abstract. If we take a series of facts, facts from your day, facts from what you did, what you ate for lunch, etc., who you spoke to when, what activities you did today, those individual events on their own don't have much significance. But if we thread them together, if we look at facts in connection with other facts, we start to see that there is actually a story beneath them. So in a way, the language of concepts or the language of ideas, the language of concepts is really something that is threaded into, there was almost like concepts could be jewels, and they're threaded into a very rich tapestry, a very rich and meaningful, symbolic, patterned tapestry. And that tapestry is this realm of stories, this realm of images. So, in a way, I think it's really important for us to try and engage with spiritual life in this kind of way, because actually, probably we have plenty of practice with the language of concepts, because we're very well educated in the language of concepts, and a lot of contemporary narrative, a lot of contemporary media is in the language of concepts. But the language of images is the language that gets down into us and maybe does the transformation that is harder to do, especially in a world that is so conceptually driven. So we have to imagine that all of us has to get on board. All of our emotions, all of our energies, all of our unconscious parts of us need to get on board in order to make real strides towards a liberation or towards some kind of illumination in our spiritual life. And we need those depths to be transformed. And so these wonderful parables which we'll hear about will be a way in which that can start to happen. Potentially. I'm not going to guarantee it. And just one thing I want to say about stories as well, because I really love stories. And when I say I really love stories, I also really love image. I've always been very interested in art and colour and sound, music. There's something wonderful about stories, which is that they're vivid. So if I told you the facts of a story, they would be rather dry. But if I gave you a story version of it and sort of coloured it and ornamented it with different settings, different characters, different encounters, different sounds, whatever it is, it becomes very vivid to us. It's memorable and it sort of affects us like this. And the positive thing about a story is also that you can't pin it down quite. So when you hear a story, when you hear, I'm going to say Little Red Riding Hood, when you hear the story of Little Red Riding Hood, you might hear different meanings in that story, and different people might hear might have different resonances from it. So that's a simple sort of ordinary recognizable one. And in the White Lotus Sutra, we actually have possibly one of the most unfamiliar stories one of the most unfamiliar stories you're probably ever going to hear, I reckon. It's stories stretched to its very edges, I think. It's stories stretched to the point of, really? So I'm actually going to, and again, you'll start to pick this up, but stories stretched to their extremes is a way, probably, of saying there is more. What we expect is not necessarily what we'll get, but there's potential that goes way beyond that. So I'm going to give, I actually wrote down, I'm going to give some fun facts to use concepts to, actually I'm not really using many concepts, to use some facts to describe a story just for the fun of it. So some fun facts about the White Lotus Sutra. So the stage is the whole universe. And it's not only the whole universe as we know it, but it's the universes that go beyond the universe that we know and the universes that go beyond that, and on and on. So there's as many universes as you want to imagine. There are more. And the time frame is, millions of aeons, so unimaginable lengths of time, incalculable lengths of time. And it all happens in one text, and we kind of get the beginning and the end, and they're all there at the end and they're all there at the beginning, but it's somehow been several million aeons. The personage of this story, it's actually more like a play. I just want to say it's more like a drama. It's a drama with transcendental light shows and all kinds of things happening. So the personage in this drama, in this story, are the Buddha, and then all the other Buddhas, which there are a lot of, in their universes. So their universes over there. The disciples of the Buddha, and also the disciples of all the other Buddhas. Then all these beings of light, these sort of beautiful androgynous beings of light. There are gods, demons, animals, human beings, all imaginable beings, and all the beings that you can't imagine are there. And the atmosphere is strange, magical. Yeah, it's very strange so far. It's magical, it's mysterious, it's miraculous, it's full of marvels. And we can't really, I don't know who imagined these marvels or where they came from, really, to be honest. And the theme of the White Lotus Sutra is the enlightenment of all sentient beings. So the theme is, again, going back to this thing, every being, whoever you are, whatever you think, there's this potential to become spiritually illumined, to become enlightened. And the theme of this big play that lasts incalculable and like lengths of time, the theme is the enlightenment of all of those beings. I'm also going to read some objects you might see or hear or encounter if you read the sutra. So I've just picked them out from just reading a bit around the sutra. So jewel trees, that's jewels, jewel trees, jewel forests, double handfuls of jewel flowers, music, perfumes, lights in the sky, incense, songs and celestial canopies, monuments made of precious materials such as gold, silver, lapis lazuli, moonstone, agate, pearl and carnelian, lion thrones, flags, rains of flowers, thunder, thundering voices, goat carts, bullock carts, deer carts, because we all love those, treasures, riches, magic cities, lost cities, plants of all kinds, medicines for all sicknesses, millions upon millions upon millions upon trillions of world systems, prehistoric cosmic events that we somehow know about, great transformations, great disappearances, and the bending of time. So it's a great story, the White Lotus Sutra. And it's unlike anything we've seen recently on Netflix, so I'm glad you all came here rather than staying home watching Netflix. Okay, so I'm just going to actually say what happens in the sutra to set the stage, and then I'm going to just draw out a few points about it. So before we get into it, the white lotus is a symbol of purity. So a lotus is a kind of flower that grows in the mud, and there's an actual kind of flower called a lotus, but it also has a mythic kind of meaning, as a mythic kind of status. And a lotus grows from the mud beneath big bodies of water, beneath ponds and lakes. So it grows from the mud. It's quite a beautiful plant in this way, that it grows from the mud, but it gets out of the water and just opens itself as soon as it reaches the sunlight. And something about lotuses that is interesting is that they grow in the mud, but they never get touched by the mud. So you get these plants, they come out, but the white lotus will open on the water, and it just hasn't been touched by the mud. So it's a symbol of something transcendental, something of a really high spiritual value, but it's in the mundane world. It's in the world as we are. So we're in the world, but there's something transcendental in our potential. In a way, you can imagine yourself as this white lotus, or you can imagine the whole world as this white lotus. You can imagine all beings as this white lotus, emerging from the mud and being in this kind of very glorious, splendid kind of flower opening in the sunlight. And okay, so a sutra, because you might have heard that word or you might not have. A sutra is a truth spoken from the depths. And what we get at the beginning of the White Lotus Sutra is we get this phrase, "Thus have I heard, thus have I heard." So basically all Buddhist texts, or at least a lot of Buddhist texts, all the ones certainly recorded of the Buddha speaking, have this beginning which says, "Thus have I heard." So it's a part of the form of sutras. And where it comes from is that the Buddha had an attendant called Ananda. He was a very sort of loyal disciple of the Buddha in his day. And Ananda had an incredible retentive memory. He's one of these people who could remember things word for word at from any point in the past. So he was a great attendant for the Buddha because he was the person who could record and repeat all the teachings that the Buddha had given. Actually, the Buddha literally would tell Ananda things that he'd said when Ananda wasn't present, so that Ananda could remember them and tell people later on. So we have this saying, "Thus have I heard." And of course, this isn't, our story of the White Lotus Sutra, as you might have guessed, isn't taking place exactly where Ananda, not in the sort of historical Ananda that we know, who also just had a robe and walked around and begged for food, etc. Ananda possibly is a symbol, again, for the ordinary mind listening to the words of the Buddha, which is the enlightened mind. So, in a way, to start this sutra with a great sort of, to start this sutra with all its images and all its richness and all of its voice of something high and beyond what we can imagine, but then it's coming through this very humble man called Ananda, is a bit of a symbol for us as mundane, normal people, people getting on with our lives in history, in time, listening to something that's beyond time, listening to something that is coming from a mind far and far beyond. So it's the unenlightened mind listening to the enlightened mind, and that's the sort of stage in which this sutra takes place. It might be even that the sutra is something that's happening inside us. That might be another way of reading it. I'll leave that with you to think about. Okay, and it takes place on a place called Vulture's Peak, which is, I've actually been to Vulture's Peak, so it is a historical place in India, and it's a very high sort of mount where you get a view over the land, and it's basically, mythically, it's a halfway point between heaven and earth. I was there with Kuslasara many years ago. Yeah, that's good. We both went there. It exists, doesn't it? Yeah, thanks. So it's halfway between heaven and earth, symbolically. And the Buddha is sat there. The Buddha actually did sit there. So he used to sit there and teach and meditate and whatever else. And around the Buddha are 12,000 arahants. Arahants are disciples who have reached nirvana. They've reached some kind of spiritual awakening. But their way of reaching nirvana is through the destruction of passions, craving, hatred. They've just destroyed all that. They've gone, right, we need to get rid of that. I mean, I'm sort of caricaturing here a bit, so I'm caricaturing arahants a bit for the sake of the story. They in a sense, they are spiritually attained, but they're not quite on the level of the Buddha. They're not quite on the level of the Buddha. What they've done is they've done the purely negative work of getting rid of craving, finding peace of mind, which is a very good thing. There's no discredit to that. They've found peace of mind, which might be what we're looking for. Peace of mind plus more. In reality, the arahants of the Buddha's day are only worthy of reverence, only worthy of devotion in a certain kind of way, because they are advanced human beings. But he's also surrounded by bodhisattvas, and bodhisattvas are beings who've committed themselves to enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So they've not only done something to sort of find peace of mind, as I'm again caricaturing, they've not only found peace of mind, but they've also realized that it's not just them in the world, and it's not just their spiritual life that matters. They see that all life has this potential to grow towards something unimaginable, and so they've committed their practice to tread that path to save all sentient beings, to help all sentient beings towards that illumination. So we've got 8,000 of them as well. 80,000. Yeah, 80,000. Because I was thinking it's like, if you could imagine filling out Wembley with people who like that, then that's how many are around him. And then you've got tens of thousands of gods, demons, etc., etc. So there's all these people around the Buddha. And the Buddha then starts delivering a discourse on infinity, as you do. So he delivers a discourse on infinity. We don't know I don't know what he says exactly. And everyone's very impressed, and flowers start raining down on the Buddha, and it's wonderful. He's giving this discourse on infinity. And then things start to get a bit strange. So the Buddha just goes into a very deep meditation. And you can imagine the Buddha is the deepest meditator there is. And so you can probably feel the waves of something as soon as he goes into meditation. Probably everyone falls silent at this point and holds their breath. Because why is he doing this? And then, from between his forehead, from between his eyebrows, a ray of light, pure, brilliant, white light, shines forth into the universe. It illuminates everything up in the sky. It actually illuminates all of the cosmos. And it's said that hundreds of millions of world systems and innumerable universes are illuminated and shown, and everyone can see all of them. So we suddenly see them all around us. If we can imagine that just happening above us here. Hundreds of millions of universes, so beyond what we thought was the normal scale of the universe, whatever we think that is anyway, there's more. And in each of those world systems, they also see another Buddha preaching to his retinue, so to another assembly. There's another assembly in every one of these world systems, and there are incalculable, uncountable numbers of world systems. So everyone's looking up, and they're actually astonished. They actually have never seen anything like this, and they don't understand. And this is bearing in mind that some of them are very wise, very developed beings, but they don't understand. Probably some of them feel rather embarrassed that they don't understand, and they probably quickly working out a way of covering up their surprise by it. Quickly working out how they're going to state that they know what's going on. But someone, a bodhisattva, one of these beings who's dedicated to saving all other beings, he asks another bodhisattva, the bodhisattva called Manjushri, and Manjushri is the bodhisattva of wisdom. He's the embodiment of wisdom. Is bodhisattva Manjushri, and he says, do you know what's happening? And Manjushri says, I think the Buddha is about to proclaim the White Lotus Sutra, and no one knows what that means. And then the Buddha sort of interjects and says to everyone, the truth in its fullness is very difficult to understand. So difficult that only the Buddhas, here we see, the perfectly enlightened ones, are able to see the truth in its fullness, not others, only the Buddhas. The Buddhas are those who have not only sort of destroyed the taints and the passions that hold them back, the cravings, the hatred, they've also been positively, spiritually illuminated in some way. And their minds have ascended to a level that the Buddha says only they have seen the truth in its fullness. And the Buddha says that everyone else, so everyone who's not a Buddha in that situation, has to approach the truth gradually, step by step, little by little. He also says later on, this is also according to what they need. And all beings will have to work step by step, but they'll also have to work according to whatever their needs are. And the Dharma, the Buddha's teaching, offers that. It offers something for everyone. It offers a hand to every person and a way for every person. And so he explains that the arahants, who were quite pleased with themselves, in the story at least, the arahants, he says, well, the thing is, I've taught that because they needed to get rid of those passions first. They needed to destroy the passions. They needed to get to a kind of peace of mind. And but then, after that, after they've attained nirvana, he then teaches them the bodhisattva path, which is the path which is about dedicating your actions for the sake of all beings, for the sake of helping all beings. So he's showing that basically the arahants who thought they'd gone as far as they could, there's actually more. And he says that if he would reveal the highest truth, the absolute highest truth, everyone would just be shocked, they'd all recoil, they'd probably all run away. So the highest truth wouldn't be ready for it, but there is probably a next step. There is a next step, actually. And the Buddha says, he says he doesn't think that everyone in the assembly is ready for the highest truth yet. He says, I don't think the assembly is quite ready for the highest truth, so I'm not quite ready to give it. And what happens at that point is a lot of the assembly, actually 500 disciples, basically stand up, do a little bow, and they walk out. And they mutter amongst themselves, no, it's not possible. He's in a funny mood today. It's not possible for us to have something higher. It's not possible for us to learn more. We simply have learned everything we need to know. We know what the highest truth is, and we're very happy with that. So we'll be back some other time. The Buddha lets them go, and he says, okay, now the assembly is quite pure, quite receptive, and ready to learn. So what we see here is the Buddha saying and letting everyone know that there is more. There is something more that's beyond their imagination, and he's showing it to them. He's revealing something to them. They hadn't imagined this would happen. They hadn't imagined there would be all these universes with other Buddhas, but he's showing them. And they're confused and they wonder why. And 500 of them decide that it's not for them. They know enough and they walk out. And basically, in a way, I think that what they do is they walk out on themselves at that moment. They walk out on their own potential. Because their potential, like all beings, is to grow spiritually and to gain and to understand the highest truth. But they think they know everything, and so they decide that's that. We won't listen to any more of this. So what happens after this, I'm going to leave to the other speakers during this retreat. What does happen, and I'll just describe it, is a series of revelations follow. So a series of revelations follow where at some point maybe a bodhisattva says something and the Buddha says, the bodhisattva is curious, is open to it, and the Buddha says, well, I know that you're going to get enlightened at such and such time and you're going to have such and such a name when you become a Buddha. And everyone rejoices, and in the rejoicing of that, everyone's so excited, a parable is told, and the parable reveals illustrates the fact that that person can learn step by step, or that person can find a gradual path towards the spiritual illumination that's their potential, or that there are treasures that they already have in their possession, they just don't know it already. So there are all these different ways in which the Dharma can reveal the next step for us on the spiritual path. So the parables, the fact that we have a sequence of parables in themselves is an illustration that there are so many different ways in which we can practice a spiritual life and in which we can grow. We don't have to fit a particular mold. We don't have to fit a particular personality type. We don't have to look a certain way. We don't have to talk a certain way. We don't have to do things in the same kind of way as other people necessarily. Each one of us is a unique individual in space and time, and we have a unique life behind us and ahead of us, and we have a unique way of spiritually growing. And so these parables are really here to illustrate that to us, that whoever we are in the room at this moment in time, there's a way for us, and we don't necessarily have to become the person that we're not. We have to find out really who we are and step deeper and deeper into the unknowns that lay before us, the unknowns for us that are out there if we engage, if we stay in the assembly rather than walking out. So it's actually a story of wonder and a story of celebration. Throughout this sutra, we find again and again these wonderful things happening to all the assembly who stay and engage. And it's true that to the extent that we engage, to the extent that maybe we just engage on this retreat, for example, the extent to which we engage on this retreat is the extent to which something unimaginable can come in and can affect us and take us forward and help us grow. And it can happen at any time. Anytime we're engaging, it can happen. So, to summarize, I'm just going to actually just pick out some takeaways for this from this section of the White Lotus Sutra and from the Sutra as a whole that we can take forward on this retreat. So these are a few things that I think are relevant for anyone, and they particularly go back to this point of not knowing and being open to more and just engaging to allow that to happen. So the first takeaway is not to walk out on ourselves. And what I mean by that is, well, let's take an example. We're sat in meditation and we're finding it very hard. there's difficult experience going on. We don't even know what it is, but we're finding it very difficult to stay in the meditation practice. And we either want to walk out the room or just stop or kind of give up, yeah, or decide that that's enough. In some way, walking out on ourselves. Even in challenging times, the unexpected can happen, and it definitely is my personal experience that in challenging times where I think all is lost, but I stay with it. Great things can grow out of that mud. Yeah, great things can grow out of that mud that we might be in. So in the retreat, see if you can stay with it, even in tough times. And remember that the unexpected can happen at any moment if we do that. The other takeaway, the second of 3 takeaways, is to step into unknowns on the retreat. So I think for a lot of us here, we've already stepped into quite a lot of unknowns to be here. I would imagine everyone here has stepped into an unknown in some way. Even if we've been to this retreat before, there's something we've done. And stepping into unknowns might just be something that we do for this retreat. I think actually, in a way, let's not get over ourselves. We've got 8 or 9 days to go. Why don't we just commit for this retreat to keep stepping into the unknowns that are here for us? So that might be stuff like meditation. It might be stuff like ritual, such as, this evening we'll be doing another ritual. Maybe that's very new to you and it's an unknown and you don't know what effect it has on you. Try, experiment. It's just for this retreat. If you go home and it didn't work, then you don't have to do anything about it. But it's worth trying, isn't it? See what's possible for us, even if it's scary. And that might also be stepping into unknowns in communication as well. We often think that we know what other people are like. We often think we know what we can get from people. But actually, there's a lot of opportunities here to step into an unknown in communication and really take another person in and maybe even let yourself be seen and known by another person. Community, friendship, and Sangha is the Buddhist word for it. Spiritual community is extremely important in Buddhism. It's one of the 3 jewels that we talk about in Buddhism. So Sangha, spiritual community. So step into communication, step into that unknown. And remember that another person is an unknown. They're a whole world just like you are. Finally, I want to suggest that we look out for ways in which we limit ourselves. So it might be that we have decided that we know how much of Buddhism we want for ourselves, or we know how much, or it might be that we think, I'm not a meditator, I can't meditate. It might be that we don't think that we can do this, but we're going to do it for a couple of days, etc. So just notice ways in which you have limited yourself in some way. Maybe there's some moment where something happens and an old story you have about yourself comes in and reins you, sort of like chains you down to your usual way of doing it. But the spiritual life, as I've been trying to say, is about being unlimited. It's about being unlimited and stepping and allowing any chains that are there for us to be unshackled and for something new to enter. Yes. I want to finish with a quote which I don't know, I couldn't track down actually who it was by. And funnily enough, I don't think I really understand it. But it says something, and I'm going to leave it with that. So this is it. There is only one story, the story of our life. It's an old story, yet it remains forever new.